Hi there. Welcome to another edition of OnlineVisas.com, the immigration show. I'm your host, Dave Kelso, and with me as ever is CEO of OnlineVisas.com, Mr. John Veely. John, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Dave. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing okay. Ever since we started doing this podcast, I find news bits about visas and immigration and that kind of thing. I've got a Google alert set for it because it's a really important topic. Right. And I was alerted yesterday, day before, about some changes to the EB-5 visa. Right. And now I know that that's an investor visa, and I know that there's quite a bit of money involved in that's come into real estate investment communities and places like that. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to get your take on some of the changes that were coming, and maybe we could start with what is the EB-5, and let's go from there.
That's a great place to start.
The beginning.
The beginning. So the EB-5 is a fantastic visa. It's it's called the investor visa. It's where foreign investors can invest either $1 million or in certain circumstances in what's called a target employment area, $500,000. They must create 10 full-time jobs for Americans or other green card holders, not themselves. So when America's out borrowing money from foreign countries, this is where foreign investors are, investing money, and they have to create jobs for Americans. It's a fantastic idea.
Absolutely.
But we can't get out of our own way. Now, with this great idea, we've just... people have wanted to do it. Lots of Chinese have wanted to do it, and the Vietnamese have wanted to do it. And so we decided we can only have so many of these visas. So we hit these caps, and now the waiting time frame for a Chinese investor has been as much as 16 years. Right?
Good. So to invest in our country.
$1 million in our country and create 10 jobs for Americans.
Now, what kind of investment is $1 million business? I mean, are we investing into chain restaurants? Are we investing into grocery stores? What kind of business does $1 million investment start?
Well, it can do a lot of different businesses. There's another type of investor visa for our treaty-based countries where you must invest a minimum of $100,000. That's called an E2. So $1 million investment is enough to be able to create 10 jobs and do some cool things. Now, with 10 jobs at $1 million or $500,000 doesn't go very far if those are high-paying jobs. But, for minimum wage jobs and, restaurants can be really great for that. But how it's being used, besides what's called the standalone, where someone wants to invest in a particular company, maybe they want to buy a McDonald's franchise or something like that, is they will do what's called a regional center. And a regional center is a pre-designated area, and usually very large, where a number of immigrant investors will come in. And they'll be limited partners, and they'll essentially say, here's my money. And that whole process takes from the time that you invested into the company and you get the first part of the EB-5 approved. It's a conditional green card. Then they'll come into the country if they're not already here on some other visa. And then they have to, after a year and a half, they can apply to prove that at 2 years, they've invested the $1 million and 10 jobs have been created or in the process of being created.
I would think that we would want a lot of people to come and do this.
You would think.
I would like piles and piles of $1 million so we can hire lots and lots of Americans because the $1 million is not really for hiring. It's to spark the economic engine that pays for the hiring, right?
Absolutely. It's been a very successful visa. It's created a lot of jobs. But what's happening is, for some reason, immigration doesn't like it. Or not just immigration. There's a senator named Chuck Grassley, and Senator Grassley has decided about a decade ago that he's just been against kind of merit-based business visas. And he's from Iowa, right? So he's not seeing a lot of this EB-5. Now, there has been some degree of fraud in EB-5 where people have made up their companies or whatever, but why?
Oh, and essentially bought themselves a visa.
Why throw out the baby with the bathwater? There's all sorts of great projects that have been, infused by this capital.
Do we have any idea what the ratio of good to bad there is? 1% to 99%, or somewhere in between?
No, we don't know what that is, but it hasn't been significant, and immigration does a great job of vetting this stuff. Right. So you have to prove that the money that you're investing comes from a lawful source. They say no drug dealers, right? So it's called source of funds. You have to show this is where our money came from. You can be gifted the money from a close relative, but not from really distant relatives. You can't just be given it from some other person. And in some countries, it's hard to show where the money came from.
Sure.
And it's hard to, because a lot of countries don't want the money leaving their countries. So, but they're getting it out and getting it here. But the Grassley bills have been against the L1 and the H1B, and he's been against the EB-5, and he's been really clamoring, it's too low, it's too low. Well, the $500,000 investor for the target employment area has been really the bell cow of the regional centers, and we're talking of big scenarios: hotels, hospitals.
And regional centers, this is where several of these investors at $500,000 apiece each come in together. Hundreds of
them. You may find 200 immigrant investors, and here's how it works.
With $500,000 apiece, and we don't want this to happen in our country?
Here's how it works, and it's a really neat program. So the initial investors will buy a piece of real estate in a big city or whatever, and maybe they're going to redo a downtown.
Sure.
Okay? And so they'll buy the investment, and then they'll use the immigrant investors as mezzanine financing. The immigrant investor is not an easy deal for a lot of folks because it's going to take them a few years to get their green card, right? So sometimes they have to hold the money there in escrow, and then it comes in once they have the initial green card approved before the conditions are removed. So they'll use them in the middle, and many times they won't pay a lot of interest on that because at some point a bank's going to lend that money anyway. So it has to be lower than what a banking would do it. Now, but on these really good ones, they have 100% approval ratings. They're good deals. They've done many projects over the years. And so people know they're going to get their money back.
Sure.
Right? And they might get a few percent back over that period of time, but they know they're going to get their money back. And so, the money's kind of gone for about 5 years sometimes, and then it comes back, and there it is. And there's programs that once that comes by, then they'll take out a more conventional loan and pay back the cheaper money.
Okay.
Right? So there's a program, it comes in and out. So what happened now with the raising of this amount of money is that it goes from $500,000 for the target area, which is either rural or high unemployment. It's usually high unemployment if it's in the city, and it's usually designated by the state. That is now being raised to $900,000 or $900,000, from $500,000 to $900,000. And so what also is happening is the USCIS wants to make those designations themselves on whether or not an area is a target employment agency. So instead of going to the census departments or the state agency that has that, they want to bring it in-house, which will make it longer,
right,
and it'll mean less of these things get done. Now, the states are turning around in a couple of weeks because the states love it. They love that money being infused into their...
Absolutely. Who wouldn't?
And so the $1 million investment's being raised to $1.8 million. So that's all the other areas. Well, so what'll happen is there'll be less of the lower investment properties available. So it'll all go. So essentially it goes from $500,000 to 1.8 for a lot of different investors. And delays in different countries. So what we've done is taken a really good idea and made it complicated. Now, a couple of things. The new law doesn't go in play until November 1st. So this is, if you want to do this is a great time to do it. There's some really great projects. And, we do all of them. We do the standalones. We just had a couple of hotels or motels done for some folks in India, who bought a series of motels and hotels, and we did that process recently. Those are standalone. We also have people that go into the regional centers, and we partner up with brokers to have them advise them on the best ones, and we've seen some really good ones.
So now is a great time to be doing this.
Yeah, before it gets a lot more expensive.
Before November 1st, if you want to get a hold of John Veely here, the CEO of OnlineVisas.com, to talk about the EB-5 visa, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Go to OnlineVisas.com.
Sure.
Set a strategy appointment. Those are free. Glad to talk to you about your situation. We can introduce you to brokers, to introduce you to the different regional centers if you want. We can talk about your own company, your own investment, your friend's company, getting a franchise if you want to do, and doing it like that directly. Or you can drop me an email at john@veelylaw.com. That's JON at V as in Victor, ELIE, law, LAW.com. Or call us at 405-310-4333.
Now, please be sure to click subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. We're also on LinkedIn. But if you need good information about visas and immigration in the United States, we encourage you to watch this podcast as often as you can. Get a hold of John at john@veelylaw.com. And thanks very much for watching OnlineVisas.com, the Immigration Show.
Take care.